Every day, millions of people board this plane. They trust that someone checked it was safe. Someone did. It was Boeing. The pilots flying it had no idea what was built into the aircraft below them. Nobody told them. That was the plan. This is the system Boeing hid from every pilot manual. One faulty sensor, no override. 346 people had no chance. 189 people. Indonesia, October 29th, 2018. None survived.
They believe the plane's fuselage is located at a point around 21 kilometers north from this beach.
157 people. Ethiopia, 5 months later. Same system. None survived.
Mangled pieces of wreckage lie strewn across this crash site, which is now guarded by local armed militia.
Same plane, same system, same failure, 5 months apart. Boeing knew. Management shipped it anyway. This is that story. The Boeing 737 first flew in 1967. It became the best-selling commercial aircraft in history. Over 10,000 delivered. Pilots could transition to every new version with minimal retraining. That history was Boeing's greatest asset and its greatest pressure. By 2010, Airbus had a problem for Boeing. The A320 Neo, more fuel efficient, more competitive. Airlines were ordering it. Boeing needed a response, fast. The answer was the 737 MAX. American Airlines was the tipping point. In 2011, they placed a massive order with Airbus. Boeing needed to match it immediately. The solution? A new 737 that pilots could fly without expensive simulator training. The bigger engines had to be mounted higher and further forward on the wing. That changed how the plane flew. At higher angles, the nose pitched up. Boeing needed software to correct it. That software was MCAS. If MCAS was disclosed as a new system, it would require new pilot training. New training meant new costs for airlines. New costs meant airlines might choose Airbus instead. So Boeing made a decision. MCAS would not appear in the pilot manual. The pilots who flew the MAX were told it was essentially the same plane they already knew. No simulator required. A short computer course was sufficient. They were never told MCAS existed. When it activated, they had no idea what was happening. MCAS stands for Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Its job was to push the nose down if sensors detected too high an angle. It read data from a single sensor. If that sensor gave wrong data, MCAS activated anyway. The catastrophic design flaw was this. MCAS used only one sensor. If that sensor failed, MCAS would force the nose down. The pilots would pull back. MCAS would activate again. Boeing engineers raised concerns about this exact scenario in 2016. Those concerns were dismissed. October 29th, 2018. Lion Air Flight 610, Jakarta, Indonesia. 13 minutes after takeoff, the sensor sent wrong data. MCAS activated. The pilots fought it for 13 minutes, pulling back dozens of times. MCAS pushed the nose down every time. 189 people on board. Nobody survived. March 10th, 2019. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. 6 minutes after takeoff. Same sensor, same failure, same loop. The first officer's final words on the cockpit voice recorder were pitch up, pitch up, pitch up. MCAS pushed the nose down for the last time. 157 people. None survived. After Lion Air went down, Boeing had 5 months. 5 months to ground the plane, warn the pilots, fix the system. Instead, Boeing told the public the 737 MAX was as safe as any plane that has ever flown the skies. Then, Ethiopian Airlines went down. In January 2020, Boeing released hundreds of internal emails to Congress as part of an 18-month investigation. And what those emails contained changed everything about how the world understood what had really happened inside that company. In April 2017, One Boeing employee wrote to another that this airplane is designed by clowns, who in turn are supervised by monkeys. And this was not a disgruntled outsider, but an engineer inside Boeing describing their own plane 14 months before it first killed anyone. In February 2018, 8 months before Lion Air, another Boeing employee wrote that they would not put their own family on a MAX simulator-trained aircraft, meaning this person knew the training was inadequate, they wrote it down, and the plane kept flying. Another email read that the employee still hadn't been forgiven by God for the covering up they did the previous year. And while the specific context was never made clear, Boeing called the communications completely unacceptable. And no individual was ever charged with a crime. The House Transportation Committee concluded after 18 months of investigation that Boeing employees had raised safety concerns in 2016, that those concerns were never relayed to the FAA, and that the exact issues they raised were the core contributing factors to both crashes. The Federal Aviation Administration is the government agency responsible for certifying that commercial aircraft are safe to fly. But in the early 2000s, facing budget cuts and a growing aviation industry, the FAA fundamentally changed how it did that job. The program was called Organization Designation Authorization, and it allowed Boeing to designate its own employees as authorized representatives of the FAA, meaning Boeing certified Boeing. And the system built to protect passengers was handed to the manufacturer it was supposed to regulate. Multiple career FAA officials documented examples where FAA management overruled the determinations of the FAA's own technical experts. And Boeing's influence over the oversight structure meant that when Boeing wanted a decision, it generally got one. When the House Transportation Committee investigated, it found that the FAA's oversight of the 737 MAX certification was inadequate, that Boeing's production pressure had created a culture where safety concerns were minimized, and that the ODA system had fundamentally compromised the independence of the entire certification process.
Chief pilots described as egregious and crazy. That's their language. That's Boeing's internal language in this exchange.
One Boeing authorized representative had raised concerns internally in 2016 about repetitive MCAS activation and the impact of faulty sensor data. Those concerns were dismissed and never relayed to the FAA. And 2 years later, those exact concerns caused the first crash, and then the second. On Lion Air Flight 610, there were 189 people, including families going home, workers returning from jobs abroad, and a young couple who had just gotten married. And every one of them boarded a plane that had been certified safe by the company that built it. On Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, there were 157 people from 35 countries, including United Nations workers, conservation scientists, students, and the youngest passenger who was just 8 months old. And all 157 died within 6 minutes of takeoff. Within days of Lion Air, Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg issued a public statement saying the 737 MAX was safe to fly, that Boeing had full confidence in the airplane, and the plane kept flying for 5 more months until Ethiopian Airlines went down.
Attack information that came into the airplane. We've also gone back and taken a look at the design of the MCAS system itself, the original design. We've confirmed that it was designed per our standards, certified per our standards.
After the second crash, Boeing's initial response was to suggest pilot error as a contributing factor in both Indonesia and Ethiopia, meaning the manufacturer whose system the pilots were fighting, without knowing it existed, was blaming the very people it had deliberately kept in the dark. At congressional hearings, the families of those killed held photographs of the people they had lost, and sat directly behind the Boeing executives who were testifying, listening to discussions about systems and software, while their children and spouses had become data points in a corporate liability calculation. In January 2021, the Department of Justice charged Boeing with conspiracy to defraud the United States, finding that Boeing had deliberately deceived the FAA about MCAS during certification, a charge that carried potential criminal liability for executives. And that liability never materialized. Boeing agreed to pay $2.5 billion under a deferred prosecution agreement, meaning that if Boeing met certain conditions, the criminal charge would be dropped entirely. And no Boeing executive was ever charged with a crime, and no individual went to prison. While Boeing negotiated its settlement, Dennis Muhlenberg, the CEO who told the public the plane was safe after Lion Air, received over $14 million during the crisis period, and his successor, David Calhoun, received over $112 million between 2020 and 2024. And no executive was ever required to return a dollar. On January 5, 2024, an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 lost a door plug mid-flight at 16,000 feet, with a section of the fuselage ripping open while passengers were seated beside the hole. And investigators later found the door plug had left the Boeing factory missing 4 critical bolts. A former Boeing quality control engineer named John Barnett, who had raised safety concerns for years and filed a whistleblower complaint against Boeing, was found dead in his truck in Charleston, South Carolina in March 2024, the day before he was due to give a deposition in his legal case against the company. In November 2020, the FAA recertified the Boeing 737 MAX to fly, and as of June 2026, over 1,000 are in commercial service, carrying millions of passengers every day, making the plane that killed 346 people one of the most common aircraft in the sky. The ODA self-certification program that allowed Boeing to certify its own aircraft still exists in modified form. The FAA's ability to independently verify safety claims still depends heavily on manufacturer-submitted data, and the families of 346 people are still in court seeking accountability that the criminal justice system never delivered. The next time you board a Boeing 737 MAX, the safety card in the seat pocket was approved by the same kind of process that approved the original MAX. A process where the manufacturer plays a central role in deciding what you need to know. And according to Boeing in 2018, what you did not need to know was that MCAS existed.